Hi and thanks for tuning in. In this week's video I want to show you how to collect your own seed from garden plants to store for next spring or to sow right now. Now when it comes to collecting seed you have to go with the flow. Some plants have flowered much earlier in the season, so they would have been setting seed in July, August time. It's November now, so the seed I'm collecting is from plants which have been flowering at the end of the season. So you've just got to go with the flow of the plants and work with the seed that's ready at the time when you want to collect it. So this is our first plant that I'm going to collect the seed from. This is a hawthorn, and it has the classic hawthorn berries on it, and contained within each berry is a seed, and that's what we're going to be harvesting later. And the simplest way to do it is with a pair of secateurs, is to remove as many berries as you like. Just bear in mind you've got to think about how many plants ultimately you want to grow. You don't need masses of them. Our second plant is this Astrantia, and Astrantias have the common name of masterwort. And this plant has the most extraordinary flowering period across the season, and that goes for all of the ones ranging from whites through to reds. In fact, it's still flowering now, and it's towards the end of November, but they set really good seed, and they tend to do that throughout the summer, but now is a really good time to harvest it. So you really want to home in on the driest seed heads. You don't need that many because each flower head has masses of seed in it, and once you've harvested it, we'll take it to the potting bench and sow it later on. Now the great thing about collecting your own seed is that you don't need a lot of kit to work with it. Essentially you just need a tray, somewhere clean to work from, that's going to collect and catch the seed as you're working with it. And then it's a case of whether you're sowing it or whether you're going to store it. You need envelopes or you need compost. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk through storing the seed for sowing next spring. So the first one I'm going to do is our hawthorn, these big plump berries. So what you have to do is you have to crush the berry to get to the seed. The simplest way to do that is just to apply pressure to the berry, and sometimes it pops out like it just did then. So the gooey flesh, if you like, of the fruit you don't want, and what you're after are the seeds contained within it, which are almost like the pips that you'd find in the centre of an orange. So I'm just going to get a few of these out first, and then you've got to get them to a state so that they're going to store. So it's a right old messy job, this. Right, so to dry off the seed you just need a piece of paper towel, and what I do is you sort of gather the seeds up, rub them in the paper towel, you might need to use 2 or 3 bits, but each time you do it, it will absorb more moisture from the seed. And one thing you can do, of course, is if you are concerned that there is a bit too much moisture there, is to, once you've done this stage, leave the seed out for 48 hours in somewhere not too dry, just cool and dry, and that will help just to drive that moisture off. So the next stage is to take the seed and put it in an envelope. The great thing about a paper envelope is it does tend to breathe a little bit. So pen, envelope, write down the name of what it is you're putting in here. So we've got a hawthorn, so it's Crataegus, and this is one called Carrierii. Put the date on it as well, and it just means when you find it in that Tupperware tub 3 or 4 years down the line you think, oh, I wish I'd sown that. But the idea is that we'll take this seed and sow it in the spring. So you open the envelope up, take your tray and put the seed in and seal up the envelope. Now what is really important is where this envelope goes. You don't want to put this anywhere it's going to get too dry. heaven forbid you sit on a radiator or something. Windowsills aren't great because they get the sunshine, so the best place to put it is in a plastic Tupperware tub with the lid on, and that basically needs to go somewhere nice and cool. And if you want to, it can in fact go in the fridge, depending on how much room you have in your fridge, but that's the best place to put it. And if you want to be on the absolute safe side in keeping the moisture levels within here to an absolute minimum, then you can use those sachets of silica gel that you often find with new pairs of shoes or electrical items. That can go in here as well. So the second plant I'm going to deal with now is our Astrantia, which had the, if you remember, the common name, the masterwort. Now these have really easy to use seed heads. They naturally form a kind of cup, and then within each cup you get a whole mass of seeds. So I find the easiest thing is with our plastic tray is if you just start playing around with these flower heads and sort of run your fingers across them, the seeds will start to fall out. And the seeds of the Astrantias are quite distinctive. They're almost like little sort of torpedo shapes. Now when it comes to sowing the seed, you want to use a seed compost, and I'm going to use this peat-free seed compost. It must be fresh, good quality, and as with anything in gardening, if you can do that and use the better quality compost, then it makes a big difference. So I'm just using a small round pot. You can use any shaped pot you want, it makes absolutely no difference, or if you wanted to use a small seed tray. Tap it down lightly. You don't want to jam the compost, because if you do that it won't drain well, and also when the seedlings start to emerge they'll be faced with compacted compost, whereas in fact what they want is something nice, open and freely draining, so that the roots can develop nicely. We'll take our Astrantia seed, and if you just tap the tray, it will collect the seed at the bottom corner. Put that onto your hand, and rather than handling the seed too much, what's a good trick to do is if you put your hand flush with the side of the pot and just start tapping the side of your hand, the seeds will sort of, in little convoy, will start working their way down the folds in your hand, and that means you can control where they land on the surface of the compost. It's very hard to do that with a big pinch of seed, as it all sort of fall in quite a random way. Because ideally you don't want to handle seed too much, because your hand has natural oils on it, and that, you know, in theory can sort of interfere with seeds germination. So they're on the surface, so now it's really just a case of covering them now, the seed, and I tend to cover everything with grit. I really like grit, because if things are slow to germinate, then it means that you don't sort of develop the green algae or liverworts, that kind of strange mossy type plant material on the surface. So you just take a handful of grit and sprinkle it on the surface. All you're doing is covering the compost and the seed. You don't want to sort of completely bury the things. And that's really all we do. And then the last thing is to write a label for the plant, with the plant it is, the date you've sown it, to give it some water, and then put it somewhere for overwintering. Now if the seed heads aren't quite ready, a really simple and neat trick is to cut a few stems now, tie them together as a bunch, and then hang them up somewhere dry and cool, and you'll find the seed ripens that much faster. Now growing plants from seed is one of life's greatest pleasures, and the whole world is full of so many different varied plants that some of them you may not be sure whether you can grow them from seed or not. And if you've got any thoughts, any questions, then leave a comment below and I'll do my best to guide you as to whether that's something you can sow or not.